and welcome back. Today's book is The Ex Hex by Erin Sterling. Although Erin Sterling is actually a pen name for Rachel Hawkins. I did not expect to like this book very much. I don't know how I discovered this book, but I definitely considered it as more of a TikTok book, which we all know I greatly dislike TikTok books. I think they're complete trash. They're terribly written. They're very cliched. And so I was so impressed by this book. It was a little more risque than I had expected, but then again, I honestly didn't know what to expect. I could not figure out why I liked this book so much, because another irony is I was just talking to some of my coworkers, or at least one coworker and then a customer, about I cannot stand romance novels. I will read a book that has an underlying romance, but I will not read a straight up romance novel. They make me want to gag. It's like sitting down and watching a Lifetime Hallmark Great American Movie, and I'm just not gonna do it. This is not some book talk author who is self-published. Again, no offense, but we all know there's a different kind of quality when it comes to traditionally published and self-published writing. And so I said, that is why. This is a very well-written book. There were moments where I felt like the plot was left behind in favor of the romance, but it passed quickly. And I wish we had more people writing romance like this, even though I wish that I could have had more meat to the plot and less romance, because of my aversion to romance. This book really felt like a vehicle to get these two characters together, and the plot was secondary. But let's get into it. So our main character is Vivienne Jones, and she's a witch. Her main love interest is this guy named Rhys, it's R-H-Y-S, and in my head it will always be Rhys, but apparently it's pronounced Rhys, so Rhys Penhallow. And the Penhallows have founded this town that Vivienne lives in. And can I say, it just touched my heart a little bit to have this novel set in the mountains of North Georgia. I found it very difficult to actually accept that this could be happening in North Georgia, but I loved the effort. It initially starts with her heartbroken because she and Rhys had this summer fling, and he had just announced that he's got to go back home because he has to deal with the betrothal his father set up. She takes it personally, she gets mad, she leaves, and then she's sulking in the bathtub when her equally witchy cousin Gwen says, "Why don't we hex him?" They do, and let's just put it out there that she was absolutely plastered. They hex him in all these different ways, but they don't actually expect it to work. But we see kind of off camera how something fishy is going on with the candle that they use, and the curtains blowing in the window, so we're thinking, something worked. Fast forward 9 years, Vivi is now teaching at the college where she had met Rhys. She has not spoken to him in all of this time, but it's Founder's Day. So somebody from this family is going to be coming to reinforce the ley lines that I guess keep this town magical. And it's not a 100% witch town. So this university is part witch, part normal, and the town is the same thing. There are witches there, but there are also normal people living there. It turns out that Rhys is the one who is going to be coming, and both of them want to deny the fact that they still think about each other, but they both still think about each other, and they both have regrets regarding that summer. And when you know it, things start going wrong for Rhys right away. He is on his way to go do something, or maybe coming back from whatever he was doing, and he has car trouble. And wouldn't you know, there's no way that he can get this car fixed, either by human hands or magically. So he's stuck on the road, and when he's walking down, he almost gets run over by another car. Who do you think is driving that car? Vivi. I loved Vivi. I thought she was so strong in all the ways that women who are like romantic leads tend to be weak. and she leaves him. When she figures out who he is, she's like, you know what, I'm not gonna help you, you can figure out your own way. So she hightails it out of there and gets back to town. But of course, now all she can do is think about him. He is supposed to give a speech for Founders Day. Nowhere to be found, so who do you think has the pleasure of going to find him? Vivi. They continue to cross paths, and he offers to let her come with him to set the ley lines. They get there, and if I have any issue with this romance, is that there wasn't much effort put into their reunion. They are obviously still in deep possibly love with each other. This is not really established what the depth of their feelings. But they are both jonesing for each other, and it doesn't take long before the hanky-panky starts. So as much as I loved Vivi's strength, when it came to Rhys and her libido, I was sort of hoping for a little bit more resistance. But they get to this cave, and the cave is infused with love magic of some sort. It definitely gets their motors running. But before anything happens, she comes to her senses. Rhys goes to reinforce the ley lines only for everything to go haywire. And now the magic is corrupted and it is affecting the town. This is when Vivi starts to say, did my curse work? Sort of, yeah. We learn at the end that it wasn't really her curse, it was somebody else's curse. So parts of her curse worked, but I was very confused by this whole novel, or through this whole novel, because it is established very early on that he couldn't have been hexed. There is nothing that actually could have worked to hex him. So why her hex worked, I had no clue, except sort of at the end, if you want to think about it that way. But I know he has a very bad relationship with his dad, but I wanted him to ask his dad, because his dad had said you can't be cursed. So I want to know how his dad could have been so wrong. And while we're talking about his dad, there's 2 more books in this series, so I'm hoping that the dad shows up. Not that I'm going to read them, it just depends on my schedule. But I hope the dad shows up, because there were 2 characters that I thought were severely underdeveloped, yet were touted as people that were kind of important to Rhys and his story. One is his brother Wells, one is his father, what is his name? Simon. And I wanted to know why Simon was such a terrible person. Why was he so cold towards his sons? And he just, I felt like he knew more than he was saying. This guy could have some answers, particularly regarding the end. I felt like he absolutely knew why they were having issues, but he was such a minor character that I kind of felt like he was overblown. And then Wells, apparently he and Rhys have some sort of deep-seated issues. Did we get into that? No. The fact that Rhys would even go to his brother instead of going to his dad, it's not like he looked forward to going to his brother, but I felt like that showed a level of trust that you wouldn't have with somebody that you have such deep-seated issues with. But we're going to stop there, because they're not important. But what we do know is that, yes, now Rhys is hexed, and so they've got to figure out how to unhex him, which I cannot figure out how to get rid of that stuff. I just can't. I guess I'm going to have to Google it, because I didn't even move my hand, and that little bubble popped up. So now it is trying to figure out how to remove this hex from Rhys. And there's no information found. However, while he and Vivi are at the library, first off, they have a very hot and heavy makeout session, which is going to lead to more until somebody starts screaming. It turns out there's a ghost in the library, and this ghost, her name is Piper McBride. Piper McBride had died, I believe, in the 90s. She was a student at this university, but she was also a witch. She had been bound and gagged, or whatever you do to ghosts, but with the corruption of the ley lines, she was able to escape, and now she's at the library and she's trying to figure things out. She does not have a very favorable reaction to Rhys, but then, she disappears, and Rhys and Vivi are called into the office and they are given a stern talking to. There is a lot of mention of the discrimination of the witches towards the normals, and in many ways their lowly opinions of Vivi, because Vivi does not use her magic. She wasn't raised using her magic because she didn't actually know she was a witch, because her mom had issues. And again, I thought we could have dove more into that, but we didn't. Maybe we'll get more into it to the other books, but I have no idea. In the end, she accepts her magic, but by this point, I was a little confused and let down, because at the beginning, she's 19 and coming into this idea of being a witch. But by 28, I would have figured that she would have accepted it far more than she did. Apparently, the biggest magic she does is to heat up her tea kettle without using traditional means. They go to the witch's office and given a stern lecture. The next thing we know, this other witch is showing up at Vivi's office. Vivi teaches history at the college. She's like, oh my gosh, I guess they're finally getting into the 21st century, because this woman, she's young, she's hip, she doesn't seem to be nearly as judgmental as the rest. And this witch introduced herself as Amanda. She's like, so the way to pay penance for what you guys have done, you need to capture Piper McBride. And the way that you're going to do that is you're going to use this Eurydice candle. How to do that? You just light the flame and it will suck her spirit in. Bada bing, bada boom, you're done. In order to do that, though, they have to find her altar. I don't remember what the explanation was for why she died or how she died, but in order to find her spirit, they have to go to the altar that she would use to do whatever. They do it, they're successful, but Piper says something about Rhys and the Penhallows, about how they'd stolen something that doesn't sit well with Vivienne. Fast forward, it turns out that Amanda is not actually a witch. She's a con artist who had evaded the witches of this university. Her real name is Tamsin, and what she was going to do was she was going to make money off this Eurydice candle by selling it, because people will pay big bucks for a ghost. My question is, how many people understand that witches live among them? Like, I thought it was kind of strange, because as far as we know, the witches do everything they can to keep the normals away from their business. So how is Tamsin so tuned in to their business that she then can peddle stolen witch artifacts to normals? I forget what bridges this event to the next, but Vivienne and Rhys come to the conclusion that they need to talk to Piper. In order to talk to Piper, they need to hunt down Tamsin. Turns out that Rhys has connections and he has learned where she is, so they track her down to this hotel. And they're very surprised that she hasn't gone further. They get there and they're like, we don't even know how we're going to be able to get to her. Nobody's just going to tell us her room number. Only for her to walk out and be like, oh my gosh, guys, so glad you're here. Let's go to my room. What happens is she's tried to, first, she couldn't go any further because things are going wrong with this Eurydice candle. And it's all because Piper is having a hissy fit about being captured. Because it's super cold, so she doesn't feel safe bringing it on an airplane. Why that would be a problem, I don't know, but whatever. It's a problem for the novel, so it's a problem for us. She's like, I tried to contact her and she will not talk to me. Will you please get rid of this candle, or will you please fix this situation? They're like, yeah, we can totally do that. So they take the candle back home, they light it, and Piper appears. Vivi's Aunt Elaine hypothesizes that maybe the problem is that Piper just didn't want to talk to a non-witch. I guess she was right, because Piper comes out immediately and she reveals that this town that had been founded by Rhys's ancestor, Griffith. Yes, Griffith. It was actually all a sham because he didn't have the power to do it. So he had invited this witch who was an ancestor of Vivi's, and her name is Vivienne Jones. So he had said, hey, with our powers combined, let's ward this town, create this town. Whatever they did, it made it a magical town. Or at least the ability to use magic, I don't know. All it is, they had to use their magic together in order to create this town and make it what it was. He lied to her, and what he did instead was he drained her of all of her power, which effectively killed her. Then he lied about what happened to her. He created a ruse for how she actually died, and then he went and buried her in shame. Her name was completely erased. This is what was stolen by the Penhallows. And so the hex that Vivi had put on Rhys was actually something, like, hers was kind of a frivolous kind of hex where, hopefully he can't, do certain things in the bedroom and his hair looks terrible and this, that, and the other. But what Aelwyd had done was she cursed him and the town so that he would die and the town would kind of die with him. So now, this is when they're having this big thing of, we don't want that to happen. So Vivi, her Aunt Elaine, and her cousin Gwen, they go to the cemetery. They have Rhys come with them, and Vivi and Rhys have resumed all activities, if you know what I'm saying. And of course, both of them are like, oh, we're just getting it out of our system. There's nothing between us. Only for both of them to realize that they have deeper feelings for each other. And around here, they have a little issue because Rhys doesn't like to be serious about things. Vivi is taking it very hard that his life is at stake, and he doesn't seem to think it's a problem. She realizes, I can't trust him. I can't trust him with anything. I can't trust him with my heart. I can't trust him with anything. So she kind of cold shoulders him and she walks away. When he comes after her to tell her that he loves her, Elaine lets him know that she's already started preparing for the ritual. So he's gonna have to wait until afterwards. They get to the graveyard and they summon Aelwyd. Aelwyd inhabits Vivi's body, and she has this discussion with Rhys because she doesn't think much of him or his family, and he has to prove to her that he's different. He has to prove to her that he does love Vivi and that she needs to spare this town, if not him, because this is the place that Vivi loves. This is where she's from. Aelwyd realizes he's the real deal, and she decides, okay, I will unhex you. What do you think happens then? Yeah, she's too weak. She can't remove the curse. Now they're in another bind because what are they gonna do? Halloween is the next day, and that is the cutoff date for all of this stuff. Well, now Vivi has another idea, and she says, if Rhys had to come here to strengthen the ley lines because it's his blood that runs through these ley lines, well, it's actually not just his blood. My blood runs through it too, as does Elaine's, as does Gwen's. So she gathers the gang together and she's like, ladies, we're gonna save the town, which they do. And you would think it would stop there because she's in love with him too. They go and, get their hanky-panky on, but she says something that makes him think, and this is a point where I was like, oh boy, now we're getting all mushy-gushy and we're getting very cliched. She says something that makes him think that this hanky-panky is a last goodbye. It is a send-off, when it's really not. And so I'm like, oh, I really hate the miscommunication trope. Thankfully, it doesn't last long. But now he responds in kind, so now Vivienne is feeling like, well, what's going on here? I mean, I guess nothing has changed and this is just never going to work out for us. So he goes back to Wales, which is where his family's from, and she stays in Graves Glen to continue teaching. We fast forward another indefinite amount of time. And she has begun teaching, so she's always eschewed her magic, her witchery, but she has taken on some witch classes as well as her own human, mortal witch classes. And she has to go meet with that same headmistress who had chewed her out earlier in the novel to get some details about her schedule and stuff. And she's just walking along the corridor and she's reading the names on the doors and she's like, wait a minute, R. Penhallow. There can't be any way. And even though she knows it's not a good idea, she's like, I'm just gonna walk right in there because I have got to sate my curiosity. Yeah, Rhys was in there. What had happened was he realized he wanted to be with Vivi, and if Graves Glen was where Vivi wanted to be, then that's where he was gonna be too. So somehow he talked them into letting him teach something. Now she's like, hey, you don't have to come here. And he's like, but didn't you just hear? I said I want to be with you. She's like, yeah, well, if you want to be in Wales, I'll come to Wales. We'll make it work. And the book ends. So I thought that was a little disappointing, a little bit rushed, because I loved the gesture. We see so much growth from him. And honestly, he wasn't as much of a jerk as I thought he'd be, considering what kind of a jerk she thinks he is. So I quite enjoyed Rhys. I really enjoyed Vivi. I will say the narration threw me off, because if he's from Wales, he did not have an accent, and I thought that a narrator could have at least tried to have given him an accent. There we go. Trying to be quick with it. I did finish this one yesterday. So guys, I feel like I'm really growing here. Let me know if you've read this or if you've read any of the other books in this series. What else do we get about this family? I don't think the books are actually connected. I thought that each book, well, not connected. I thought each book was going to be about these two, but it seems that the next book is actually about Gwen and Wells, Rhys's brother. But we might see one day. As for now, have a great day. Bye.